One of the things that it's very important for us to understand as fitness or rehabilitation professionals is a modern concept of pain, how pain actually works, what it actually is. A lot of it is misunderstood because a lot of us still think that pain is something that happens in the body, like this hurts because there's a pain signal being sent from here. In reality, pain is a multifactorial, very complicated process, and it's always in the brain. So if someone says, oh, your pain, well, it's in your head. Yes, it is in your head. Everyone who has pain, it's always in their heads. Pain is experienced in the brain, and pain is an active output of the brain, which is created for a reason. So a very good and way to illustrate this, a good concept, is one that I've borrowed from my friend Dr. Cobb, who teaches on the concept of the threat bucket. And I think this is a very useful way to understand and explain pain. So if we have a bucket here, imagine that is the threat bucket, and that's all of the things that could be perceived as threatening to you in your day. So there's a nozzle here that will put out pain. So we start out, the bucket is empty, and then all of a sudden your spouse comes home and is mad at you because you didn't take out the garbage. So you get a little bit of threat there, and then you don't get a good night of sleep, and you wake up the next morning and you are pretty tired and you need a cup of coffee and you're kind of dragging through the day. And then you go out to eat at night and you drink some alcohol and you have a huge cheesecake that's about this big, and that's pretty stressful on your system, and your threat bucket is starting to get full. And then you're not breathing very well during the day, you're not using your diaphragm, you're not properly oxygenating your body, your blood is getting more viscous or more sticky, it's not flowing as well, you're not delivering oxygen to your tissues as much. Gosh, life's getting pretty stressful, at least from your body's and brain's perspective. And then you go out and play your weekend game of basketball, and you tweak something in your ankle and it hurts for a day or two, but then it goes away, it gets better, you think it's fine, you think it's gone, and then you go through the rest of the weekend, things are good, you think, and then you show up to work on Monday and your boss says you're fired. And all of a sudden, this stress in your stress bucket crosses the threshold, and because it's now over this line here, some of that is going to come out, and the output that you get is pain. So pain is an output created by the brain in order to make you change your behavior. Pain is an active process. And you know what? Because you just had that ankle injury down here, your brain kind of knows that pathway is available, and it'll choose that pathway. So it's going to start giving you ankle pain because it knows that, oh yeah, I know that pain pathway because I just used it recently, and I think I can use that to change your behavior. And whenever we have, most of us as human beings tend to have one place or a couple places that will always act up. Yeah, I'm good most of the time, but as soon as I go out and work out or do this, my back starts bothering me. I get that, or I get something in my hip, or I get something in my elbow. So we usually have these pain signature pathways where the brain gets really good at triggering that pathway, and so whenever the stress bucket overflows, it's going to use that preferred pathway that it has a lot of experience using. And sometimes it can be as simple as a good night's sleep or a few days in a row of a good meal, and all of a sudden the pain goes away because of this concept here, because it's not just damage or anything to an area, but it's the overall perception of threat that occurs in the brain. And there's another interesting corollary here. A couple of studies that look at, one for instance, researchers looked at 30 Major League Baseball pitchers, and they did MRIs on their shoulders. So they're throwing, they're pitching, making hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars in major leagues, and they're healthy, no complaints. MRIs of their shoulders showed that at least 25 of those 30 pitchers had damage in their shoulder bad enough to justify surgery. So, oh my goodness, these guys, their shoulders, they need surgery, and yet they're not complaining about anything. If they had any symptoms, gone into their doctor, they would have had surgery, but that injury, that damaged tissue wasn't the problem. They were not experiencing pain because their nervous system didn't perceive it as a threat. It didn't interfere with what they were trying to do. For one reason or another, they were able to work around it, and it was okay. So the connection that we think that if something hurts, it's broken, isn't always the case. Sometimes things can hurt when they're not broken. Sometimes things can be broken and not hurt. So there's a lot that goes into this, and there's a lot of very interesting things coming out of modern pain science. But for now, let's just at least know this concept as a foundational piece to understand this, that pain has to do more with the perception of threat than anything else, and that it is an active output from the brain in order to create behavior change. And so sometimes we do want to pay attention to that. If my knee keeps hurting when I run, that means I may need to make some changes and do that. And so one change I could make, one thing that might affect threat, is that if we have a lot of protective reflexes in the body, a lot of protective responses, because the body's like this, even if there's no immediate threat, then the threat bucket might be pretty high just at baseline. So if we can do some of the NeuFit manual work or some of the work on the machine and free the body of those protective reflexes, then the threat bucket level is going to go down, and we're likely to reduce pain. Another thing that we can do, if the brain can't predict properly what's going to happen next, if the brain has this proprioceptive map of the body where it's constantly monitoring where all the body parts are in space, so it knows how to control them and what to have them do next. If that map is blurry and the brain doesn't exactly know where the body is, it's kind of like being in a dark room. If you're in a dark room, you're not going to walk very confidently. You're going to be, feeling for where's the chair, where's the bed, where's this, where's that. You're moving slow and with greater tension to try to protect yourself. So if that map is kind of blurry, you'll have that same phenomenon going on all the time. We're going to have less movement. The brain is going to try to create excessive tension to protect you. And so proprioceptive work, like some of the movements that we do here with the machine and some of the corrective exercises, by clarifying that map of the body, where the body is in space, the proprioceptive map, by clarifying that, we also can again drop down the threat bucket level in there, which again can also help reduce, by reducing this level, reduce the output of pain. So there's a few interesting takeaways from this, and please know that our work is definitely influenced by a modern understanding of pain, and we are taking advantage of a lot of these new phenomena that have been discovered in the recent past.